We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos and Chelik Gimel. This is the Sicha for Shabbos HaGodel. In this Sicha, the Rebbe will explain that while you read the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it seems like twice a year, once the Shabbos before Pesach and Shabbos Shuvah, the Shabbos before Yom Kippur. It seems like the Alter Rebbe is saying that you teach the halachas that are negeya to Yom Kippur, negeya to Sukkos, and on Shabbos HaGodel, the halachas that negeya to Pesach. But the Rebbe points out, if you look closely in the Loshen of the Alter Rebbe, you'll see that the Alter Rebbe is talking about something more than just the halachas. He's talking about the Darkei Hashem. You teach them the passageway. A passageway is the way that leads up to that. The Rebbe answers several questions that also on the halacha, because this way, whether we include Yom Kippur, we don't include Yom Kippur, as we'll see in the Sicha, we're learning this Leilu Nishmas Rab Levi Yitzchak ben Rabbi Chaim Tzvi Tei Nishmos Yitzrura B'Tzrei Chaim, and we'll go step by step. Aleph. In Ershton Simon for Hilchos Pesach, in the first chapter of the laws of Pesach, schreibt der Alter Rebbe in sein Shulchan Aruch. The Alter Rebbe writes in his code of law that Nogu B'Deres HaAchronim, that it's a custom in the generations lately, in the later generations, Shachocham Deresh Hilchos Pesach b'Shabbos Shelefonov, that the Chacham, the sage, will expound the laws of Pesach in the Shabbos that precedes Pesach. The Shabbos before Pesach, you expound on the laws of Pesach. Provided im Einei Erev Pesach, if that Shabbos is not Erev Pesach, and Erev Pesach itself, you won't do these halachas. And also you do V'Hilchas HaChag Doirish B'Shabbos Shuvah. The laws for Sukkos, you expound on the Shabbos Shuvah. The Rebbe brings down in Yiddish over here, many Zichnoyag in the letzte Doirish, that in the latest generation, the custom is that the Chacham Darshan, the dinim from Pesach, that the sage expounds the laws of Pesach in the Shabbos Vosfarim, in the Shabbos that precedes Pesach, which is Shabbos HaGodel. Oipsi is not Erev Pesach if it's not on Erev Pesach. On the dinim for Chag Sukkos in Shabbos Shuvah, the laws of Sukkos, of the Sukkos festival in Shabbos Shuvah. And the Rebbe is going to bring out that there is a little bit of a difference between the language, the way the Alter Rebbe brings it down, and the way the source, which is in the Minhagei Maharil. The moker from the Minhag is in Minhagei Maharil. The source for this custom to expound the laws of Pesach is in the traditions of the Maharil. Und es wird gebracht in Bach und Mogen Avram. It's also brought down in the Bayis Chodesh and in the Mogen Avram. Aber the Loshen von Alten Rebben is anders from the Loshen from the Mogen Avram. The language of the Alter Rebbe is different than the language of the Mogen Avram. In the Alter Rebbe seems to apply that we're only teaching the laws of Sukkos on the Shabbos, Shabbos Shuvah. In the Maharil and the other sources, it seems that we teach the laws of Yom Kippur and the laws of Sukkos. But in the Alter Rebbe, the way the Alter Rebbe quotes it, it seems that we are only teaching the laws of Sukkos and Shabbos Shuvah, not the laws of Yom Kippur. Let's look inside. But the Loshen von Alter Rebbe is anders from the Loshen von the Mogen Avram. The language of the Alter Rebbe is different than the language of the Mogen Avram. The language of the Mogen Avram is, Umaharil hoyodoirish gam hilchas chag b'Shabbos Shuvah. The Maharil would also expound on the laws of Sukkot and Shabbos Shuvah. The word also means besides the laws of Yom Kippur, on the Shabbos Shuvah, he would also do the laws of Sukkot. Mit dem Wort Gam, when he says also, he's merames, so he hints to, as Neusevos Hilchas Yom Kippur was man darf darshenen b'Shabbos Shuvah, that in addition to the laws of Yom Kippur, well, one needs to expound on the Shabbos Shuvah, the Shabbos that comes before Yom Kippur. Darf man darshenen oich Hilchas Achag, you must also Gam Hilchas Achag, also laws of the festival. But when the Alter Rebbe lost the word Gam, the Alter Rebbe omits the word Gam. Was is Merames of Hilchas Yom Kippur, which hints for the laws of Yom Kippur. Bringt nor Hilchas Achag. He says on Shabbos Shuvah you expound the laws of Sukkot. Darf men verstehen, so we need to understand. For was is the Alter Rebbe mashmit? So why does the Alter Rebbe take out as Medav Darshan Euch Behilchas Yom Kippur that you also need to expound the laws of Yom Kippur? He takes out the Gam and he just says the laws of Sukkot. On Shabbos Shuvah, you should expound also the laws of Yom Kippur. So that's one question. And the other question would be, the laws of Sukkot would be appropriate to read the Shabbos before Sukkot. Sometimes there's only the Shabbos before Yom Kippur that also precedes Sukkot, but sometimes there's a second Shabbos between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. So in those Shabbosim, why should you do the laws of Sukkot on the Shabbos before? Why not do the laws of Yom Kippur? Why not do the laws of Yom Kippur on laws of Sukkot between Yom Kippur and Sukkot? That would be more appropriate. Also, we need to understand. Shabbos Shuvah is doch nicht allemol der Shabbos was far Sukkot. Shabbos Shuvah is not always the Shabbos that precedes Sukkot. Weil Asachyon is the Kvius as is faran nor ein Shabbos zwischen Shabbos Shuvah und noch ein Shabbos zwischen Shabbos Shuvah und Sukkot. In many years, the setup is that there is another Shabbos between Shabbos Shuvah and Sukkot. Hat man doch l'chayre gedarf Koveya sein, so they should have set up to Darshenen in them Shabbos, was is am nonstun par Sukkot. They should have instituted to expound in the Shabbos which is closest to Sukkot. So, ubefrat ledas Rabbi Nazokim, especially according to the Alter Rebbe, that we're not even expounding the laws of Yom Kippur, it's only Sukkot. Was is nit barames vilchos Yom Kippurim canal, which doesn't hit for a hint for the laws of Yom Kippur. So why would you darshan the laws of Sukkot before Yom Kippur? Why not the Shabbos in before Sukkot when there is another Shabbos there? Why did they institute the custom that the sage should expound the laws of Sukkot, specifically Shabbos Shuvah? Also, in those years that there is another Shabbos before Sukkot, there must be a reason why we're skipping that Shabbos when there is another Shabbos. We're doing it the Shabbos before Yom Kippur. This will all be explained once the Rebbe explains what really we're darshaning, the derech, as we will see. We also need to understand when the Alter Rebbe is mevayer dem teuche for the drushes, when he articulates what's the content, what are you expounding in Shabbos Shekoyim Pesach or Shabbos Shuvah, on the Shabbos which is before Pesach and on Shabbos Shuvah. So what does the Alter Rebbe explain? What do you expound on the Shabbos Shekoyim Pesach or Shabbos Shuvah? Is there medayik b'lishoyne hazov in his golden language, in the Alter Rebbe's pure, beautiful, precise golden language? Vo iker lidrosh ulahoyres lohem. The main thing is to expound and to instruct them. Darkei Hashem, he says, the passage, ways of Hashem, and to teach them what they should do. He says two things here. to teach them the passage way of Hashem and what they needs to do in Yiddish. Und der Iker is zu darshenen, and the main thing is to expound and anweisen die Wegen von dem Eibishten, to point to the ways of Hashem, und zu lernen sie die Meise, was sie sollen tun, to teach them the action that they must do. Was teilt es in zwei besondere Brote? Why is the Alter Rebbe splitting it up in two details? Wegen welche Darke Hashem, which kind of ways of Hashem darfen es darshenen und anweisen that you need to expound and you have to instruct in Zugab to them was lernt ha-mais asher yasun. In addition that you're learning the actions, what you must do, also teach them the passageway of Hashem. What are we talking about? The Rebbe explains that the passageway of Hashem, what we're talking about, the Alter Rebbe is talking about, is the level of Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem. Those are the ways through which a person can actually reach. The Rebbe says if you do a mitzvah without Ava V'yira, eventually it isn't going to last and it can fail. So those are the passageways to make sure that it continues, as the Rebbe will elaborate. So the Rebbe says we can say, the Alter Rebbe is domeramis, the Alter Rebbe hints, as in zwei Shabbosim, Shabbos HaGodl, Shabbos Shuvah, darshent men nit nor Hilchos HaPesach v'Hilchos HaChag. That on these two Shabbosim, you don't just expound the laws of Pesach and the laws of Sukkot. But the halachas men midiverter, this halachas, that the actual halachas, that is meant with the words mit lahoyres darkei Hashem. No, hamais sheyasum, what that should do. That's the second step, what you should do. But not euch wegen inyonim was eine negeya zu avodas ha'odom b'kiyum kol ha'mitzvos b'chlal. But this is talking about, the Darkei Hashem is also talking about matters which are important to the service of man and observance of all the mitzvahs in general. But gemeint mit lahoyres Darkei Hashem. This is meant with instructing the passageway of Hashem. The instruction, the passageway of Hashem means those passageways that are necessary to come to the mitzvahs of Hashem. When the Rebbe had the Alter Rebbe ausgelost in Hilchos Yom Kippur, that's why the Alter Rebbe left out the laws of Yom Kippur. Weil benegeya zu Iker Hilchos Yom Kippurim darf nicht haben kein besonderen Zman zu darshenen wegen sei. There is no specific time to expound about them. We say that this is before Shabbos Shuvah, we're going to expound the laws of Yom Kippur. Whenever, that's okay. Bibal, as they werden schon nichlal, because they are already included in the droshes von lahoyres darke havaye was mezok b'Shabbos hagot b'Shabbos Shuvah. Because the Darkei Hashem that is expounded in on Shabbos the Shuvah and on Shabbos Shuvah and on Shabbos before Pesach, so they're included was mezok b'Shabbos hagodol b'Shabbos Shuvah. Al derech v'mot nit kaveh gewend zu darshenen in dem Shabbos for Mosfar Chag HaShavuos. Why didn't we make a takone? The Alter Rebbe explains before Shavuos to expound to leave them vos. So the reason is because Atzeres ain't boy halachas miyuchodes. At Shavuos doesn't have any special halachas. Shekol isur veheter hanoigim boy noigim gam kein Pesach v'Sukkos. All prohibitions and prohibitions and permission, what you can do, apply to Pesach and Sukkah. We don't need to make a special halachas for Shavuos. As in Yiddish, in Shavuos, seinen nit faran ke besondere halachas. On Shavuos, there's no separate halachas, weil alle Sachen von Isur veheter, was eine neue Shavuos, because all Issa Veheter that apply to Shavuos, seine euch neue in Pesach and Sukkot, they also apply to Pesach and Sukkot. So therefore, the main laws of Yom Kippur, they already included when you do the Darkei Hashem for Pesach and Sukkot, Yom Kippur is included. And that's why we don't need it, because we're talking here about a separate Darkei Hashem, which is twice a year, as the Rebbe will explain exactly what they mean. In Ois Beis, the Rebbe will explain what is it a derech. What is the pathway? The pathway leads you to a certain place which you want to go to. The pathway is not the goal. The pathway is just the way to reach to your goal. And the Rebbe will explain what it means in the service of Hashem. The goal is to do the mitzvahs, but the pathway is that we have to have the means, the love and the soul and the kavanah of the mitzvah. And the Rebbe will go through the whole details. Why is it so important to have kavanah? Let's go base. That inyan fun aderech is the idea. What is a road? Is was durch im kemen zukommen zu a gewissen Ort. Through the road, you can reach a certain place. Der Tachlis is nicht der derech allein. The goal isn't the road. Der derech is mehr nicht wie am Mittel. The road is merely a means, was führt zum Tachlis, which leads you to the goal. Aber on the Mittel, but without this means, kemen dem Tachlis nicht erreichen. You cannot reach the goal, what you want to. You got to go through the road. Der Tachlis from the ganzer Bria is the goal. What is the goal of all of creation? As Eden sollen in Welt mekayim sein mitzvahs bepoil. That Yidden should observe practically in action the mitzvahs. Hamaisa asher yasun, the act that they shall do. Nor bichdei as the ma'aser soll sein wie es darf zu sein, in order for the action to be as it should, mit Leben und Neshama, with life and with soul. Vor mitzvah beloy kavonis keguf beloy neshama, because a mitzvah without intention is like a body without a soul. It's dead. It's not alive. Darf man haben Abbas Hashem. That's why you need the love of Hashem, und Yiras Hashem, and the fear of Hashem. For they bringen arein chayis in der kiyum ha-mitzvahs. They bring life into the observance of the mitzvahs. The love and the fear of Hashem bring life to the mitzvahs. Und das seinen die Darkei Hashem. These are the ways of Hashem. Was bringen zum Tachlis von Mekayim sein mitzvahs bepoil. They bring to the goal. You need to go through there in order to fulfill mitzvahs in actuality. And now the Rebbe is going to spend a little time to explain to us, well, if the mitzvah is the goal, is doing the mitzvah itself, why are we saying that the kavonas ha-mitzvah, the Abba v'yira, are necessary components to bring or lead you to the mitzvah b'poil? Why can't we do just the mitzvah so it'll be without a neshama? It'll be just a goof. Isn't that the goal? And the Rebbe explains, emes taka as a ma'aser hu ha'ikar. Let it be true. Action is the main. How do we see that the action is the main thing? Because if a person should have all intentions from a mitzvah, aber the mitzvah bepoil veter nit mekayim sein, but the mitzvah itself he will not observe, is over of the mrotzon ha'eliyah, so then he's violating the will of God. Intentions cannot take place of the mitzvah. If you do the intentions, you have the intent. If you don't do the mitzvah, you violated the will of above. Masha'enkein, on the other hand, Oy bepoil that mikton the mitzvah, if actually you'll do the mitzvah, chotches wel in feln ihre kavonis, although the intention will be lacking, but the mekayim them the ikir from the mitzvah, then the main part of the mitzvah he fulfilled. Und führt ois dem Ratzon Elyon, he fulfills the wishes of the Supreme. So why is it so important to have kavanah if the mitzvah, main mitzvah, is doing the actual mitzvah? Von deswegen darf der Kim ha-mitzvah sein mit Chai. Still, we need the observance of the mitzvah to be with an energy. Und das kann sein nur durch Ava v'yira. This can only be with love and fear of Hashem. Kann man doch teinen, so one can argue, was art es as tut die mitzvahs on a chais? Okay, so why is it, who cares that he does the mitzvah without energy? He's just fulfilling his obligation. When the mitzvah is bepoil. At least he did the mitzvah in actuality. Oh, so they're a body without a soul. Felt taka the neshama. So you taka missing the neshama. Aber wie bald as der Guf von the mitzvahs hat since he has the body of the mitzvahs, is doch voran der Iker, so he has the main thing. So why do we say that he has to have Ava v'yira? That's the road for the mitzvah. He can have the mitzvah without having the neshama. Is there entver of them? The Rebbe says that that lasting, that mitzvah won't last if he's just doing it. And especially when there's challenges, the mitzvah itself is not gonna suffer. The answer of them, if you do a mitzvah without energy, their ton is not lotzis, you're only doing to fulfill your obligation, other from gewohnheit, or you are used to it. In an oifim for mitzvahs anoshim mulamoda, you do it as the mitzvah of people that was they learned mitzvah. So then, in the end of the day, this also touches it touches the actual practical mitzvah. You're not going to say you'll do it out of a year and you can still do the mitzvah, because in the end of the day, it will impact the actual mitzvah itself. In Zugab to them, besides the fact, the Rebbe says, but the mitzvah vetan giton on hidurim, the mitzvah then is done without perfection, because you're just doing it just to do it, but you don't do it with perfection. About doing the mitzvah on chayis, because when you do the mitzvah without energy, without passion, just to fulfill your obligation, he can fulfill the obligation without doing the perfections. So he has no reason to do perfection, because he's just doing it to do the mitzvah. So besides that, he's even going to affect that he's going to stop doing the mitzvahs altogether. So first of all, like this, since he's not utilizing the energy in Torah mitzvahs, so his energy, his passion expresses itself in other things. Until matters which are opposite of Torah mitzvahs. So if a person has energy, has passion, either you put your passion in Torah. If you don't put the passion in Torah, it's going to go into other matters. Although in the beginning he is still complete, he does all the actions of the mitzvahs, because he wants to fulfill his obligations, so he is still going to be doing the mitzvah. The Riber beherrscht seine midas, therefore he controls his emotions, und and his desires, und tut die Pflicht, and he does the obligation was liegt of him that's laying upon him. That's in the beginning. He's over the no, but later on, mitzad dem was sein Rotzen und Chayes, because his will and passion seien nicht in Gedushini Kinyonim. They're not in holy matters. He starts to search. And the fact that the bribery makes blind, it's comfortable. He will find that Gefin Farshidene heterim, you find various kinds of allowances, permissions, Eichav dvarim ha'asurim, even things that are prohibited. Un aveda gareres aveda, one aveda drags with it another aveda. Erfad noch nidriker, he falls even lower. As a fall durch afile in isurim, that he fails even in prohibition. Ken nit he can't even find a permission for that. Bees to the extent this is just a process of that the person keeps on going lower and lower. Bees are kept showing nit and kegen seine midas till he doesn't fight against his character traits, taibas, and his desires, was liegen in dvarim hasurim, are in prohibited matters. If you don't have the chayis in kedusha, you have the chayis in other matters. If you have the chayis in other matters, you don't do the mitzvahs in a perfect way, and you start finding excuses to do it in the simplest ways, and eventually this causes to be dragged down, and you look for various heterim, and then you don't even look for hafterim, or you give in, and you go to the level that you don't wage war even against things that are prohibited. And that is why Muzayna Chayis in Kiyama Mitzvahs, you must have a passion in doing mitzvahs, but those kum durch Havavira, that comes through love and fear. Und der Fahr seinen Zeh Dichlal in Darche Havaya. That's why that's part of the path of Hashem that leads you to mitzvahs, because without them you don't do mitzvahs. They are the roads that bring it to the Aufhaltung und Shleimus von Maisa mitzvahs. They bring to the hold up and to the completion, to do the act of mitzvahs in the proper way. They are the passageway that is necessary to lead us to the road to the goal of doing the mitzvahs. And then the Rebbe brings down, there is also another idea over here. The Rebbe says you're missing out if you do the mitzvah without passion, without Avavayira. You're missing out on a big chunk of what the purpose of the mitzvah. The mitzvah was given to improve, to refine the character of the person. If you're not doing it with chayis, there's missing out. Another idea. Even if the actual act of the mitzvahs, there would be missing nothing. Even if you're doing it without passion from deswegen, yet the bald as the mitzvah is doch guf below neshama. Since the mitzvah is like a body without a soul, is as nit kefiyah kavona. Then you're not doing, that's not the Eibishter's intent. The Eibishter wants the mitzvahs to be done. Just like the Eibishter wants Maisa mitzvahs, he also wants the mitzvahs to be done with kavona. The kavona v'rotzon elyon is as sein lebedik mitzvahs. The intent and the wishes of the Supreme is it should be lively mitzvahs. The time of them. Why is it necessary to be lively mitzvahs? Mitzvahs and gegeben geworden. Mitzvahs were given b'rdei l'tzarif bahem es abrius in order to refine the people. B'rdei as the Yid was to the mitzvah, so that a Yid that does the mitzvahs will werden ausgeedelt. He should become refined und verbunden mit Neibishter and connected and tied to the Hashem. Was der Verbund von dem Eden mit dem Ebersten, to tie yourself to Hashem, you don't only want to tie yourself with the lowest of levels of the action, you want to tie to Hashem with your emotion, with your mind, with your fear, with your love. Was der Verbund von dem Eden mit dem Ebersten, that tie, that connection of the Yid with the Hashem, darf nehmen alle seine Keuches, it must encompass all your powers. Bis zu pnimis hanefesh, till the inner part of the soul. Ubemela, and therefore, Eiber beton the mitzvahs. Nor lotze sidei chenvose, if you do the mitzvahs just to fulfill the obligation on the chayis, without a passion, without energy, verdoch demuk the mitzvah geton, then the mitzvah is done. Blois mit koyach hamayis alein. He's only invested with the power of action. He's just doing his emotion, his energy is not involved in it. Is doch dann verbunden mit Neubishten, so then he's tied to Hashem, nor mit sein koyach hamayis, only with his power of action alone. The Rotzen Elyon of Isober, but Hashem's supreme will is, however, as der ganze Id, the entire Jew, with alle seine Keuches, with all of his energies, soll werden verbunden mit Neighbors and should become tied with Hashem. Durch dem, was alle seine Keuches werden bekeim sein, the mitzvah, through all of his energies to fulfill the mitzvah. Not from deswegen, however. Choch as the Rotzon Elyon is as alle Keuches. So how do we fulfill a mitzvah without passion? We say the Maisa Hu Ha'ikar. Still, that's what the Rebbe says. The Rotzon Elyon is as alle Keuches, the Keuches Pnimim, that also the inner powers, davon sein verbunden mit Neibishtim, they also need to be tied to Hashem. But Adrabe, Keuches Pnimim, not only did they also, but the inner powers, the emotion, the inner powers of the person, sein in Hecher, und Edelen from the Keuch HaMaisa, they're on a higher level and they're more refined than just the power of action. He's a before the Avodah mit the Keuches Pnimim, but still service just with the inner parts, Avavira, to love and fear Hashem without doing, nit an inyan farzich. It's not a subject for itself, just to have a love and fear of Hashem. But on the tachlis from the Avavira is because the ultimate goal of the love and the fear, as is bringen chayis and kima mitzvahs v'poil, that this should bring energy in fulfilling the mitzvah actuality. While tachlis hakavona, the ultimate intention is diri b'tachtoinim, to make a dwelling place in this lower world. So emotionally and love and fear in of itself doesn't do it, because you need to bring down the diri b'tachtoinim. But das kommt durch koyach hatachnish be'adam, that comes through the lower power of the person, durch maisa mitzvahs b'poil, to the act of mitzvahs in actuality. The shleimus hakavona from diri b'tachtoinim over. But what is the complete, the full intent of the Tachtonim? Is that Kima Mitzvahs is accomplished when the observance of the Mitzvahs is Bechol Kachesov, is with all of his powers. This is the pshat from them, and this is the meaning, was the Avodah B'Koiches HaPnimi Ava V'Yira. The avodah with the inner powers, this the love and fear werden angerufen darchei havayim. They are called the roads of Hashem. Their tachlis is maisa hamitzvahs, because the goal is doing the mitzvahs. Hamaisu iker. Midem nemt men atzmus muhus ein. That's the way you take the essence and the mehus of the infinite blessedness. Aber vichdei as der verbund mit atzmus. It's only verbleiben behellen, but in order that connection with the Atzma should not remain obscure, if them sein in the Darche Havaya, that's why we have the ways, the passage of Hashem. The Avoida Pnimis in Hasoga und Ave Beira, the inner service, the grasping and love and fear, was they seinen die Drochim, the inner, so they are the roads was verbinden begilui. They are the roads that openly tie, they bring together openly Atzmus HaMelech mider Maisa B'Poil, the essence of the king with the action in actuality, practically speaking. Those are the roads that bring together the service with the Abba V'Yira. The Abba V'Yira brings the king into this world, through the Maisa B'Poil, in a revealed way. Now, with this we can understand the language of the Rebbe, Darchei Havai Lashon Rabbi. He says a plural. When he's talking about Negei, Kima Mitzvahs B'Poil Zoktar HaMaisa. Over there he says in a singular, V'loi ha'asiyas, not the actions. Asher Yasun, the Maisa. Lashon Yochid. When he wrote by the passageways, Dr. Drochi, the Darchei Hashem, Darchei Loshen Rabbim in a plural. Mitzvahs, everybody does the same, but the Darchim, Avivir, it's individually. While Maisa mitzvahs, because the act of mitzvahs, Hagam, as is an Farantariag mitzvahs, although there are 613 mitzvahs, is Zeir Inyan Ein Zach. There, what is the mitzvah? One thing, there's Shibut from Koyach HaMaisa to Mebersten. to enslave the power of action to Hashem. But when we talk about the inner service, then there exists different levels. And every Yid according to his level. So every Yid has their level. So there could be a lot of darkei, the darkei havaya, many different levels because there's different ways. But generally speaking, tales of the drachim and tzvei they divide in two categories. Or the benusach achar, using a different language, aderech dintev tzvei zachen, a road serves two purposes. Halo milmato lemailo, to bring from below to above, v'hamshocha milmailo lamata, and to draw down from above to below. As from Feld zum Dorf, from the field to the village, und Stadt to the city, to Heichel HaMelech to the palace of the king, and from Heichel HaMelech bis zum Feld, from the palace of the king to the field, that the road goes in both directions. A two-way road. Was das ist der Klolus Achiluk from the Raveda from Chodesh Nisan to the Raveda from Chodesh Tishrei. Generally, the difference of the month of Nisan is the road from above to below, and the Raveda of Chodesh Tishrei, the road from below to above. Nisan is Hamshocha. Nisan is to draw down. And Tishrei Halo, Tishrei is to elevate. Kimavur Mokamachar is explained elsewhere. And the Riber is their minhag. That's why the tradition is to darshan and tzvei layor 2 times in the year. Shabbos for Pesach and Shabbos Shuvah. The Shabbos before Pesach and the Shabbos before Yom Kippur, Shabbos Shuvah. Baldan is the Zman from the Tzvei Sugya Avedus, because that is the time of the 2 types, categories of service. Shabbos for Pesach Hamshocha, the Shabbos before Pesach drawing down, and Shabbos Shuvah is Allah bringing up. Und in die 2 Droshes werden steht nichlal Allah Avedus von Yor. And these 2 sermons, speeches, and the elevating and from the top to the bottom, from the bottom to the top, includes all service of the year. The Inyonim from Zumer in the Droshe from Shabbos HaKodl, the aspects of the summer in the Droshe of Shabbos HaKodl. The sermon of Shabbos HaKodl, that's all the summer matters. When the Inyonim from winter, the ideas of winter in Shabbos Shuvah. In the Shabbos Shuvah, that is the level from Tishrei, from below to above. This is Sichos Shabbos Shuvah Tavshin Yutes.